How's everybody doing? Welcome to week 3 of Howling with the Wolf. Man, we're full and fledged with football season. It's been a fun 2 weeks. It's been a blast, and thank you guys for joining me once again. I have a few questions that viewers have asked before we kick this off. I'm going to jump into those, and then we're going to talk about some of the hot topics around the NFL. I want to talk about Fitz Magic, which was a weird controversy over the last, couple of days between Minka Fitzpatrick and Ryan Fitzpatrick. I want to talk about the Antonio Brown situation in the Steelers. I'm going to break down the Dolphins and the Raiders game that's later on this weekend, and we're going to take some of your questions at the end. We're also going to do a score prediction as well at the end. So thanks as well for joining. I'll go ahead and jump at some of the questions that you guys asked me before we jumped on this live. Felipe Azamora, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. He is asking which side of the ball, as far as the Dolphins, has surprised me the most so far this season. We're 2 games in, so we still got plenty of football left. But I would say the defensive side of the ball has definitely surprised me the most. I thought the offense would be, efficient. They played a little better than maybe I thought, but they haven't blown away anybody. The best thing about them has been their rushing ability. And I think that the defense leading the NFL in interceptions, leading the NFL in passer rating against, being in the top 10 in rushing yards per game, being in the top 5 in points per game against average. Those are all things that surprise me. The way their defensive line is playing, guys like Devon Gotchow, guys like Robert Quinn are having a heck of a start to the year. So I think that has been a true surprise for me. And I think if they continue that can change their ceiling from maybe a team that you're thinking 7-9, 8-8. I predicted 8-8 to start the year. Maybe this is a team that can compete for a wild card spot, which is who they think they are, which is that 9-7, maybe even 10-6 range. So maybe they're on the higher end of their ceiling if that defense plays the way they can play throughout the year. So I would say that's definitely my biggest surprise. Number 2. We'll take another question, and then I'll go ahead and jump into the topics that I mentioned. Luis Velasquez is asking me, who are my top 3 teams and bottom 3 teams thus far in the NFL season? And I think, at this frame, I think it's very clear to see who maybe a couple of the worst and better teams are. I had trouble getting a third from each area, but I'll go ahead and go with this. The best team I've seen so far looks like I would say the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they beat up the Patriots. This is a team that played really well last season, and they sort of surprised people, got to the AFC Championship game, and lost to Brady at the very end of the fourth quarter. And I thought that was something where if they improved on their level, I thought quarterback was one thing that's holding them back. If they improved on that, then maybe they can be considered a true top-tier contender. But Blake Bortles has played well. He played really well last week. I think that's still one of their Achilles heels. But that defense is so dominant. I saw them win last week by double digits against the Patriots without Leonard Fournette. I think that's a really dangerous team. And if they get anywhere near Blake Bortles' playoff time last season, then that's going to be a team to be reckoned with. Number 2, the Minnesota Vikings, team that also came into the NFC Championship, one game away from the Super Bowl. I think they've really established themselves as a really balanced offensive and defensive team. Kirk Cousins has done wonders for that team, and I think they're going to be a team that deep into January is going to make a lot of noise. And number 3, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this may be one of the bigger surprises in the NFL, the way they played so well. Patrick Mahomey, whatever you want to call him, the youngster with the cannon, he has been balling. They had a shootout with the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and Mahomes threw 6 touchdowns. He has been one of the biggest surprises, taking over for Alex Smith, and I think they're so far the 3rd best team in the NFL to me. We've sort of had this spell with Kansas City over the last couple of years where they get off hot and then they kind of, dissipate a little bit. So you're trying to figure out, are they real? But this Kansas City team feels a little different. They have a little bit more aggressiveness, a little bit more funk as far as an offensive team. So I think this team is something to reckon with. Bottom three, I'll kind of rattle them off. Buffalo, that's the worst team in the NFL. I don't think there's any argument, my perspective, around that. So I think they're the worst team in the NFL. Um, Arizona, I think Arizona is their best competitor for worst team in the NFL. I think they'll go neck and neck for the number one pick all through the year. Um, Arizona scored 6 points so far this season. 6 total, 2 games. Not a very good team. Buffalo, doesn't matter who the quarterback is, not a very good team. And number three, this is a team that may surprise folks, but the New York Giants. They had the name value with Odell Beckham, with Eli Manning, with Saquon Barkley. But that offensive line is terrible. They haven't looked very good up front. They haven't done much, continuity-wise on either side of the ball. And they look like right now they're going to be just as bad as last year. And last year they had a top 5 pick, top 2 pick. So those are my bottom three, my top 3 teams. Let's go ahead and jump into some of these key headlines, I guess, that we've had throughout the NFL. And I see you, Grandma. I see you, Dakota. I see all you guys. As always, you can fire your questions away through this chat, and I'll jump around to them. But for now, we're going to go on to a few key topics. I think that one thing that happened here in Miami, and of course nationally as well, that I've talked about on ESPN NFL Live this week. I've talked about it on my .com stories. But Minkah Fitzpatrick and the Fitzmagic trademark. I never thought that was going to blow up into a story the way it has. But sometimes these things have a way of taking life of their own. And Minkah Fitzpatrick filed a trademark for Fitzmagic, a name that he said he's had since high school. And of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a lot of fans thought that he deserves that name. So there was a lot of controversy. It really turned ugly because Minkah was telling me the other day that his mom, himself, his family began getting vulgar comments on social media because of this Fitzmagic thing. My verdict is, hey, yes, Ryan is probably older. He probably was the first person nationally that was called Fitzmagic, but nobody holds on to a nickname until they hold on to a nickname. I'm sure that Ryan wasn't the first person called Fitzmagic. He won't be the last. There's no reason to go after a guy's family and who they are as a person because you disagree or you want to ride, your player. I thought that was silly. I thought that was keyboard warriors. And, that's sad that Minkah's mom had to go through all that. So those are sort of my thoughts on that. I thought that the story blew up in a way that Minkah didn't think. Minkah's been playing a heck of football. He's probably one of the top 5, top 10 rookies in performance so far this year. So it's not like he's just a nobody. But I think everybody got caught up in the Ryan Fitzpatrick hoopla, and they kind of forgot about what it would do to Minkah. So I hope that going forward, we as a society don't really go that far with how we, attack people as far as something that's as fun as a nickname. But hopefully that's something that, those people learn from. So that's one thing I wanted to discuss. I wanted to talk about this Antonio Brown thing. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Antonio Brown obviously didn't show up for Monday's Steelers practice ahead of this Sunday's game. And he had a dispute earlier this week on social media with a former Steelers PR director talking about the Steelers PR director basically said that Antonio Brown is who he is today because of Big Ben, and that essentially he wouldn't be that type of player with anybody else. Antonio Brown goes to social media and says, "Trade me, bro," and then everybody goes into panic. Antonio Brown has talked and said that it wasn't a trade request, but he didn't show up Monday. That's already a team with a lot of turmoil with Le'Veon Bell not being there. Big Ben often has his things. It's just a team that chaos, sometimes like the Dolphins, seems to follow. So I think that overall, my thoughts on it is that AB is a very emotional guy. My take on it, I've covered a lot of volatile players in my career. Aqib Talib was one of them. A lot of them were in Denver, whether it's TJ Ward, whether it's Aqib Talib, guys who, let's just say, you want them to show their fire, but you don't always like how it results. I think that Antonio Brown is one of those guys, but he is the best receiver in football, and he's not going to be traded. He's not going anywhere. And I think that, this is something that it sucks that Mike Tomlin has to deal with this. You hope that guys kind of, know, hey, social media takes a life of its own and don't get into this stuff. But it is what it is at this point. They've made their bed. Hopefully they make up, and you see Antonio Brown ball out this week. I just traded for him on my fantasy team because somebody wasn't really happy with the production that he, with the trade rumors that everything was out. So we'll see. My whole perspective on all these guys is that they know it's a business, but they're people too. So they have their emotional spells just like you and I would, based on what's happening in our job. So I don't fault Antonio Brown too much. But the Steelers have to be a little worried about, having all these personalities on the team and, having to figure out how to control, not necessarily control, but how to manage these personalities on a team that they feel like they're still have a ceiling to win now. So it's probably frustrating for Mike Tomlin, but it is what it is. And yeah, so as always, guys, fire away your questions. I'm going to go ahead and talk about this Dolphins-Raiders game and break it down for Dolphins fans who are watching or Raiders fans who are watching. And then from there, I'll answer you guys' questions, give you my X factors, a score prediction, and then we'll head out of here. Thank you guys for supporting, as always. The Dolphins-Raiders game, the Dolphins are 2-0. The Raiders are 0-2. This screams trap game to me. You got an 0-2 West Coast team traveling to the East Coast on a short week, a team that's struggling against a team that's playing pretty well, and the Dolphins should win this game. I think they're 3 points favorites, which means Vegas doesn't respect them as much as they probably should be respected. But that odd is probably because of the trap factor in this game. John Gruden and that Raiders team didn't expect to be 0-2. They're probably going to come out with a little bit more tenacity. The Dolphins can't afford to be punched in their mouth. So I think that, a huge portion of this matchup is going to be how the Dolphins defend, some of the Raiders' unique weapons. And by unique weapons, I'll start with Jared Cook, who had a field day on national TV. I think the first week of the season, I think he had over 150 yards, and that's something he victimized the Dolphins last year too. So I think that's a weapon that the Raiders will not hesitate to use. So how do you defend him? How do you defend a guy like Marshawn Lynch, who is going to try to run through your face, as he said many times before, run through your face over and over and over again? They have a guy like Frank Gore who shows them some of the physicality, but Marshawn Lynch is at a completely different level. And I was talking to Frank Gore in the locker room earlier about Marshawn Lynch. He said, hey, that's my man. I don't want to see him shine on this Sunday, but otherwise, that's my man. And I think those are two guys who probably are going to have a lot to say about the Hall of Fame by the time their career is done. I think Frank Gore is already a lock. I think Marshawn Lynch, maybe another year or two of his type performance, and he can start to get himself in the conversation where you may need to include him too. So both of those guys will be interesting to see. And then from the Dolphins' offensive perspective, I'm really intrigued to see how they attack with the running game. They're sixth in the NFL in rushing this season, and we have seen a really steady balance of King and Drake and Frank Gore, where King and Drake typically getting them more rushes. I want to see them pound that running game quite a bit more. We've seen Ryan Tannehill's efficiency, but you can't let this become a situation where Tannehill throws over 40 passes. You got to continue to feed Drake, continue to feed Gore, and I think that's a formula for a Dolphins victory. This is a Raiders team that has been gashed in the running game. You can have some success on this team running the ball, and I think that should be the Dolphins' formula offensively. And then defensively, they've got to figure out, we've got to take away Jared Cook in the passing game and Marshawn Lynch in the running game and make them force the balls to their receivers. And if you can do that, if you can force them to get the ball to Amari Cooper and Jordy Nelson, that forces Derek Carr to hold on to the ball a little longer. He's one of the fastest in the NFL, and getting rid of the ball along with Ryan Tannehill. So that allows you to get guys like Robert Quinn and Cameron Wake after him, and they can feast a little bit more. So those are a few of my thoughts on, quick breakdown of the game. I'll talk about X factors and predictions a little later. As always, if you guys have any questions, fire away. I have one viewer before we started asked for predictions. I'm going to do that at the end of the segment. I answered Felipe and Lewis's questions. I'm going to go ahead and jump into my X factors for this game. One of my biggest X factors of this game is Devontae Parker. He's a guy who a lot of Dolphins fans are not sure or don't believe that they need him on this team because of the success early from some of their other receivers. Obviously, Devontae Parker is a first-round pick from 2015, but he's been out for a broken finger for the first 2 weeks. He's most likely going to play this week. I expect him to play this week unless something happens, with the injury. But he's the biggest and most physical. I'll just say biggest, not necessarily most physical. The biggest and largest target for them. So he changes the dynamic of their passing attack, and I think he can be an X factor in this game. How many snaps does he play? What impact does he make on the game? Who does he replace in the rotation? These are all questions that are going to be important for the Dolphins now and going forward. So I'm interested to see how Devontae Parker, what impact he makes on this game. Number 2 X factor in this game is going to be Kiko Alonso. Kiko Alonso had what Adam Gase called one of the best games he's seen from a linebacker since he's been around. High praise. Kiko Alonso was probably one of the top 3 players on the field, maybe top 5 players on the Dolphins all overall his first 2 games. So he's a really good player. He kind of scratches my X factor ratio with not necessarily naming players who are expected to play a big role, but you can't hide from Kiko having a big role this week. He's got to defend Jared Cook, who I mentioned earlier, and he, along with Jared Cook, may be the matchup of the game to watch. How does he defend him? He's going to see some time on him. The safeties are going to see some time on him. Micah Fitzpatrick is going to see some time on him. So I think seeing all of those guys attack will be, one of the defining factors on if the Raiders or if the Dolphins win this game. And I think my final X factor, and I like to pick somebody typically on the other team for this for this one, but the X factor on the Raiders side of the ball is going to be Garyon Conley. Garyon Conley is their first-round cornerback, and he's going to have a lot of things thrown at him from Kenny Stills. He'll probably play a lot of Kenny Stills. He'll probably see some Albert Wilson. He may see some Danny Amendola. How does he defend? You probably see some Devontae Parker. How does he defend the Dolphins' plethora of receivers? He and they signed another cornerback, Rashawn Melvin, who's their other corner. How do they fare against Ryan Tannehill and those receivers? So those are my 3 X factors. I'll go ahead and hop into my predictions, and we'll call it today. I predict the Dolphins to win and go 3-0, party in Miami, buy your Super Bowl tickets. Not yet. But I have them winning 26-20. I think that they talk a lot about adversity, overcoming adversity, and this is a team that would have, wilted under the situations of a trap game last season, but they say they're beyond that. They say they have got past that in their life. So we will see. This is a team that you're supposed to beat. If you're a playoff team, you beat teams like the 0-2 Raiders coming to your crib. So I think that they should win this game. I think they do win this game, and they go 3-0, heading into Patriots week in Foxborough next week. So that's it for me today. Always follow my work on ESPN.com. Share with your friends. I really want to build this Howling with the Wolf thing up. This is something that I'm trying to brand myself. So I appreciate all of you guys' support. Please share to your friends. Please like my page on Facebook and on YouTube where I post these videos afterwards. And hopefully we can keep this thing rolling. Hopefully we can keep this vibe and this chat going to the next level. So thank y'all and see you later.